Welcome to this rapid revision session looking at the Geneva Accords. This was the peace treaty that ended the French Indochina War. So the Geneva Accords, why was Vietnam divided? After their defeat at Dien Bien Phu, and you can find a revision lesson on that as well if you don't know about it, French and Vietnamese representatives met in neutral Switzerland for peace talks. The Geneva Accords were signed in July 1954 to end the fighting in French Indochina, but neither side was happy with the results. Let's have a look at why. Firstly, North Vietnam was unhappy. Ho Chi Minh would run communist Vietnam from Hanoi, but he now controlled less land than he had at the end of the war with France. You can just about make out Hanoi in the north of the country when you look at the map to the right there. However, both were unhappy because Vietnam was divided along the 17th parallel, with a demilitarized zone which no troops could enter in the middle. Both sides felt vulnerable to attack, even though the demilitarized zone was supposed to prevent this. Notice that the 17th parallel, which is simply a line on a map rather than a geographical feature, roughly divides the country in half by area. However, it's not exact, and many of the people on Ho Chi Minh's side resented this as much as the South Vietnamese did. South Vietnam was also unhappy as well. The Vietnamese people could move for 300 days after the accord was signed. They worried that people would desert the South for the communist North, believing that that would give them a better life. The North was also unhappy because Ho Chi Minh would run only the North communist. A man called Bao Dai would run the South, with President Diem helping. They would run their part of the country anti-communist. You can see that there is the recipe here for a real disaster and a lot of fighting. Both sides were unhappy though because of the elections that were planned to be held. Elections would be held in both the North and the South in 1956, but no system was yet put in place for this. Also, South Vietnam was unhappy because no US or foreign troops could set up bases in the South. And the South had relied on American help. The USA refused to recognise the Accords. So there's a lot of reasons why both sides are unhappy here. It's a fairly rushed job to get the country divided, and both sides really wanted the country to be united. The South wanted to rule the whole of Vietnam along anti-communist or capitalist lines, and the North wanted a united Vietnam being run along communist lines. Let's have another look at the geography. If you'd seen my previous session on this, you'll maybe recognise parts of this map. But whereas it was all previously French Indochina, it's not anymore. Following the Geneva Accords, the countries of Laos and Cambodia were created. Vietnam was split along the 17th parallel, as we've mentioned before, into the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, which we'll most often call North Vietnam, which was communist, and the Republic of Vietnam, or South Vietnam, which was not communist. I've included their flags there as well. Hanoi was the capital of North Vietnam. You can see it on the map. It was an important port town and, when the Vietnam War kicks off properly, an important place where Soviet and Chinese supplies could be unloaded. And Saigon would be the capital of South Vietnam. Again, I've marked that on there. You might want to make your own copy of this map. Some final points then. The Geneva Accords ended fighting in French Indochina, but neither side was satisfied. A reminder of why it was split. Firstly, North Vietnam. This was communist, led by Ho Chi Minh. It wants to take over South Vietnam and unite the whole country under communist rule. Secondly, South Vietnam, known as the Republic of Vietnam. It is not communist and it was backed by the USA. It doesn't want to be taken over by the North. Thirdly, the Viet Cong. These are communist fighters inside South Vietnam who want to overthrow the government and let the North take over. This is not to be confused with the North Vietnamese army. We've also got Laos, a neutral country, not taking sides, but they allowed North Vietnam to send supplies to communists in the south who are fighting the government of South Vietnam. More on that when we come to look at that fighting. And Cambodia, like Laos, except it becomes communist in 1975 after its own civil war, but that's a story for another time. Alright, so that's the situation after the Geneva Accords are signed, and really it's a situation that's going to result in a lot of conflict, as we'll find out in future sessions. It's been a short and sweet video this, but thanks very much for watching. If you've got requests for other things that you want me to cover, pop them in the comments below. If this has been useful, then please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. But for now, that's the end of this rapid revision video. Thank you again, and goodbye.